Hello and welcome to Under the Radar with Tim Peacock, the podcast where we usually choose an album from an artist's body of work we feel has been overlooked or underrated for any number of reasons. However, while it's broadly the same in design, this latest episode differs slightly in that the artist we're here to celebrate has only released one official album, so that's the one we're compelled to choose. Having said that, it's a record which still beguiles almost 40 years after it was first released, and it's suffused with an elusive beauty and power that ensures it will likely bewitch new listeners for generations yet to come. The record in question is called Miss America, and it was recorded by a Canadian chanteuse called Margaret O'Hara. It was released by Virgin Records in November 1988, but had a difficult gestation, to say the least. Having blown her future label away with an initial demo in 1983, the Toronto singer-songwriter was rapidly snapped up by Richard Branson's imprint, but almost immediately ran into trouble with the initial album sessions. Miss America was supposed to be produced by XTC frontman Andy Partridge, with help from John Leckie, famous for producing not just XTC, but also The Verve, the Stone Roses, Radiohead, The Fall, and many more. However, it's been well documented that these early sessions at Rockfield Studios in South Wales didn't work out, with Partridge and Leckie being quickly relieved of their duties. Further sessions took place with former folk rock guru and R.E.M producer Joe Boyd helming the production, though the album finally fell into place after O'Hara and her band returned to their native Canada for further recording, with these sessions overseen by multi-instrumentalist and producer Michael Brook. Also hailing from Toronto, Brook's credits include a Grammy Award for his production work and musicianship on acclaimed Pakistani artist Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's album Night Song, and a Golden Globe nomination for his soundtrack for the 2008 film Into the Wild. And his work on Miss America proves that he was able to bring out the best in Margaret O'Hara. When Miss America was finally released, it ended up competing with impactful titles released by other pioneering and slightly cerebral female artists such as Anya and Tanita Tikaram. But in terms of freewheeling creativity, O'Hara's debut was light years ahead. Indeed, one contemporary Canadian review of Miss America pretty much nailed it by saying O'Hara's vocals are by turns incantatory, melancholy, slinky and delicate, while the music flirts with country jazz and pop without ever committing seriously to one style. This elusive quality is one of the reasons Miss America still fascinates today. Songs such as the strident A Year in Song, the hard-edged My Friends Have, and the bright, celebratory A New Day ensure the album makes enough concessions to mainstream rock and pop to keep it grounded and cohesive, though there's no doubt that its most precious cargo is its selection of truly colossal ballads. To this end, the album's sparse, intimate opening song, To Cry About, immediately sets the bar high, though it's arguably matched by the glorious Patsy Cline-esque Dear Darling and the infinitely dreamy, jazz-inflected Keeping You in Mind. However, Miss America rightly saves its ultimate showstopper back for the end, with You Will Be Loved Again, one of the most daring, affecting, and downright otherworldly torch songs you're ever likely to hear, with O'Hara's voice reaching places that perhaps only Jeff Buckley has visited since. On release, Miss America met with mostly positive reviews, with Melody Maker's enthusiastic critique suggesting that rarely has the language of popular song been so delicately and deftly subverted. The record also quickly established itself as a musician's favourite, with alt-rock luminaries such as Throwing Muses and Michael Stipe and Cowboy Junkies Margot Timmins singing its praises, and the Cowboy Junkies even covering You Will Be Loved Again for their third album, 1990's The Caution Horses. However, commercially, Miss America was a slow burner. It never really set any charts alight, even in O'Hara's native Canada, though she kept the flame alive with some transcendent live shows in 1989, where audiences in the UK and Europe were especially entranced by her performances. In a Sounds review of her Manchester gig, This rather smitten writer was deeply moved by her voice baked in the kiln of heavenly delights, while perhaps more succinctly, Time Out's critique of one of her London shows declared O'Hara to be the most cathartic female presence to emerge in white popular music in the 1980s. In fact, in retrospect, it's fair to say that Mary Margaret O'Hara was certainly a critic's darling, and for many showbiz insiders, she was seemingly an odds-on favourite for international fame during the 1990s. Yet that's not how it's panned out. Instead, the Canadian singer-songwriter went on to guest on a couple of Morrissey's best songs from the early 90s, including the underrated November Spawned a Monster, and she also released a low-key EP of festive covers in time for Christmas 1991. But the hotly anticipated follow-up to Miss America has simply never materialised, with O'Hara instead becoming involved in teaching and graphic design. Supporters ran up the flags when she recorded the soundtrack album for the film Apartment Hunting, in which she also acted, at the turn of the century. But while that was diverting enough, it was no Miss America. And since then, the chances of a second full-length studio album from Mary Margaret O'Hara have seemingly become painfully slim. There have been selected gigs, numerous guest slots on songs by artists as diverse as the Tindersticks, the Henrys and the Hidden Cameras, and in more recent times O'Hara has returned to film work. She played a significant role in Jem Cohen's 2012 movie Museum Hours, set in Vienna, and she then resurfaced in 2024, performing the voice of legendary classical violinist Kathleen Parlow in the Canadian drama Measures for a Funeral. Indeed, at the time of writing, Mary Margaret O'Hara is still active, so we should never say never. But even if she never records that mythical second album, we'll always have the transcendent Miss America, and we should thank our lucky stars for that. That's all for this episode of Under the Radar, but please join us next time when we'll be reappraising the work of a fantastic singer-songwriter and guitarist hailing from South Wales, whose less is more approach to his craft has resulted in a highly original body of work.